Hi there, welcome back to St. Thomas Aquinas for Everyone. I'm Dave Palmer, and answering a question here that was put on one of the videos recently by a gentleman by the name of Jeff, and I appreciate the question very much. The suggestion, I guess you could say, is that he asked me to produce a video where I explain the basic structure of an article of the Summa and how to read the Summa itself. And I think it's a great question because a lot of people are very intimidated by the Summa. And I have mixed feelings about whether everybody should dig into the Summa or not. I think if you read it and it makes sense to you and you enjoy it, primarily if you enjoy it, then keep going. If it's drudgery, then I think you need to find another way to learn the Summa, either through videos like this, where I try to make it as simple as possible. There are, of course, many other people who are teaching the Summa, but I do definitely believe that everybody should learn basic principles of Christian philosophy, and St. Thomas Aquinas is the greatest Christian philosopher of all time, and so why not learn Thomistic philosophy and also teach it to your kids? If you're watching these videos, watch them with your children, and I'm talking about young kids too. You 10, 11, 12, 13 years old, certainly teenagers before they get to college. I think everybody has to have a foundation in Thomistic philosophy. I really believe that. First of all, you got to understand the Summa is big, okay? 5 volumes, 631 questions, approximately 3,000 articles. So today I'm going to talk about one article. There's 3,000 of them, and there are 10,000 objections and also answers to the objections as well. And so it's big, and it takes a while to get through it. The first time I read the Summa, it took me 9 months. The second time it took me a year because I was reading it more closely. It definitely takes a commitment, but I think it's a commitment worth doing. All right, so how do you read an article of the Summa? Yeah, here are the basic parts of it. It starts off with a question. Thomas, in every one of these articles, the 3,000 of them, there's a question that's asked. And so let's take, for example, the very first article of the Summa, which I will argue is probably the most important article of the Summa. There's a reason why Thomas chose this question to start all the articles that he's going to give. And if you go back and watch my video early on, I'll explain why this is so important. But for the sake of this video, I just want to talk about the structure. I don't want to get too much into the teaching. Thomas asks in the first article whether besides philosophy any further doctrine is required. Now he's going to argue, yes, there is further doctrine that's necessary. He calls it sacred doctrine as opposed to philosophy. And then, so that's the question. The next thing he's going to do is he's going to present objections. And there's anywhere from 2 to 5 or 7 objections. And what he's doing here is he's presenting his opponent's argument. Okay, this is not what he believes. This is what his opponents believe. And I think there's a couple reasons why this is important. First of all, it's showing tremendous respect for his opponents in that he doesn't want to just brush them off and say you're wrong, but instead he wants to say, I want to respect your opinion. In fact, I respect it so much that I want to try to explain it to the best of my ability, not last, but first. And so I want to give your answers first. And so, like I said, 2, 3, 4, 5 objections. I'm just going to show you one for the sake of this video. He will say, okay, again, whether besides philosophy any further doctrine is required, and he believes there is a further doctrine that's required, but in the objection, it seems that besides philosophical science, we have no need for any further knowledge, okay, on and on and on. So here's his opponent's argument. He doesn't agree with this, but he's presenting this first. And then would come objection 2 and objection 3 and objection 4. And then when he's finished with all the objections, he moves on to what's called the on the contrary or sed contra. Now, this is another thing I love about Thomas. Rather than saying, well, you know what I think about it, which he eventually is going to do, rather he's standing on the shoulders of giants that preceded him and saying, let's first see what authority says. And so in this case, he is quoting Scripture, 2 Timothy 3:16. Scripture is very commonly quoted in the sed contra. Aristotle, Augustine, Damascene, Jerome, one of the other church fathers, it's somebody that has credibility. And so he's saying basically, this isn't just my opinion, this is the opinion of Scripture or the great Greek philosophers, Aristotle, like I said, very commonly quoted. So that's the sed contra. Every article of the Summa has a sed contra where an authority is quoted. And then, and only then, does he have what we call the corpus or the respondio section of the Summa. And this is where he is going to say, this is what I believe is true, based on authority and based on, his investigation. And he always starts at that I answer that. So this is personal. This is what his opinion as a philosopher is. It was necessary for man's salvation that there should be a knowledge revealed by God besides philosophical science, okay? And again, he's already presented the objections. He hasn't answered them yet, but he's quoted an authority, and then he's given his opinion. And then finally, and only at the very end, does he show, again, a lot of respect for his opponents, and he says, I'm going to go back to those objections that I started with, and I'm going to answer each one individually, and that's what he does. He doesn't show the objection again like what I'm doing. I'm just putting it up there for your sake. So this is with the objection I showed, and he says, here is my response to the objection, and this is why I think that's not true. And so you can see how in learning the Summa, we can learn how to argue, and arguing is a good thing. Quarreling is bad, but arguing just means that we're having a discussion on some kind of intellectual topic. I don't personally think there's enough arguing that's going on in our culture today. We need to argue more, always respecting each other, walking away loving the person more than when you started. But argumentation has kind of been lost in our culture today as far as a respectful dialogue between people who don't necessarily agree with each other. Okay, so that is how to read an article of the Summa. I recommend that you do it and you dig in and see if you like it. If it's too much for you, that's okay. Watch videos like this. There's a lot of people even much smarter than I am that are doing a great job in teaching the Summa, and you can just find one whose style you appreciate and do it. But again, I do think everybody should learn the Summa. I think everybody should study it. I think especially in this age, the need for basic Christian philosophy is so important. So dig in, okay? Anyways, thanks again to Jeff for the suggestion. And if you have any suggestions about how I can make this channel better and how I can teach better, I would appreciate it very much. God bless you, and thank you for watching.